This conference will now be recorded.
Hi all, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the day one of the exclusive training provided by Isha Training Solutions, JMeter Beginner to Master, Groovy, Dynatrace, Kubernetes, Docker, InfluxDB, Grafana, Jenkins, and BlazeMeter. I'm Chandra, your trainer for this exclusive training. So let us start with day one, guys. So yesterday was our demo session where we went through the different topics which we are going to cover as part of this training, and we have started the introduction, right? So let us continue from there today. Before I start, anyone has any queries? I'll take it as a no. Let me start sharing my screen. I hope my screen should be visible to all of you. So yesterday we discussed the different types of non-functional testing, that is performance testing, site reliability or operational acceptance testing, then the security testing, browser compatibility testing, and accessibility testing. As part of this training, our focus will be on performance testing. Can anyone confirm if my screen is visible to all of you?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it's
It is
visible.
visible.
Thank you so much. Okay. So moving on to the next topic, guys. Why performance testing is required, right? We are doing performance testing, but what is the objective? Because already there are so many other types of testing going on. The functional testing team, the automation testing team, they are already doing a lot of testing, right? Then why again an additional testing to be done? So it is very, very important, guys. Performance testing is very, very important. Previously, the projects were not taking performance testing that seriously, but within the last few years, people have understood, the projects have understood, the customer stakeholders have understood the importance of performance testing. So why performance testing is required? The first factor, guys, is the speed. Okay, the speed of the application. So you as a user, you would be using different applications. For you, the user experience is very, very important, right? As a user, as an end user. Just imagine you are using any application. So you are the customer of that application, right? For you, it is very important that you have a good experience with the application. Otherwise, what will happen? You will go to its competitor, right? If you are not having a very good user experience with any particular application, you get, you know, frustrated, and then you think, no, I'm done with this application. I'll go to the other application. So because of that, what has resulted, guys? The application has lost a customer. The application has lost a user. And from the application owner's point of view, if users get reduced, then they are going to make loss in the business, right? And no business wants to make loss, guys. Here, all of you. Now, the very important factor for having a good user experience is the speed of the application. Now, what do I mean when I say speed? Whenever you are using the application, you should be able to view the response or whatever navigation you are doing. The respective web page should appear on your device. It could be a desktop, it could be a mobile device. It should come really fast, which should have a pleasant experience for the user. So that is why the speed of the application is very, very important, guys. Okay, we'll discuss that in more details later. Next is scalability. Now, yes, let's say my application has very good speed. Okay, my application has very good speed. It is able to respond to the requests, whatever the users are making. Now, let's say the number of users using the application at any point of time is 5,000, and suddenly the number of users increased to 8,000. The application was behaving very well for 5,000 users, but all of a sudden, let's say 8,000 users, or not all of a sudden, within few months or few years, 8,000 users have started using the application. Now the application is not able to meet 8,000 users. So can anyone tell me your thoughts from the application point of view, from the application owner's point of view, right? Would they be happy to cater to 5,000 users, or will they be happy to cater to 8,000 users?
8,000.
8,000, right? All the
Mm.
application owners will be happy if they are able to cater to 8,000 users, because their user base is increasing, their customer base is increasing. But in reality, the application is not able to cater to 8,000. So what is the problem here? The application is not able to scale up, right guys? The application is not able to scale up, right? Scalability is not happening, guys. Clear? All of you? It was having very good speed for 5,000 users, right? It was having very good speed for 5,000 users, but when it was 8,000, it could not cater to those many users. So as a result, let's say 6,000 users were happy, but rest 2,000 were not happy with the application. So the application owners or the solution architect, the development team needs to do something about it. So basically the application could not scale up here, right, to meet the additional volumetric. So it's not that we should only verify the speed, rather we should also verify the scalability, guys. Very, very important. Understood? The next point is reliability. Just imagine that the application is having very good speed, the application is having very good scalability, but all these things are for a shorter duration of time only. When I consider time, right, when I consider time, okay, when I consider time, these two factors like speed and scalability are very good for this application, but on a longer period of time the application is not having good speed, is not having proper scalability. Now in the best interest of the application, it also need to have good speed over a longer duration of time, guys, right? It should have good speed over a longer duration of time. Okay, so that is where, guys, we need to have the application need to be reliable also. And to verify these factors, we do different types of tests. Okay, we do different types of tests. Till now, any queries, anyone? Any queries, anyone now?
Actually, it's very clear, sir. No queries.
Any? Yeah, I was just trying to check if anyone has put any messages in the chat. So no messages in the chat. So guys, whenever you have any queries, please do not hesitate to unmute yourself and ask your query. Okay. In between, I'll also ask like if anyone has any queries. But in case you have any queries, guys, please do not hesitate. Okay. So please unmute and ask your query. So these are the different factors because of which we need performance testing. Now, before we understand about performance testing, like few people might also be aware of performance testing, but this session is for everyone, right? So let us go through some of the common terminologies, okay, which we normally use in performance testing, guys. Okay, virtual user, like yesterday I was telling, I believe, right? Whenever we do performance tests with 5,000 users or 10,000 users. We are not going to hire 5,000 people or 10,000 people and have an office setup where we have 5,000 systems, 10,000 systems, and ask those people to, start using the application at the same time and continuously use the application for 2 hours, 3 hours. That is not possible, right? Practically, it is impossible, guys. That is why we have the different performance testing tools, and these performance testing tools helps us in generating the users. So those users are not real users, right? But they generate the users for us, and these are known as virtual users, guys, in performance testing terminology. Whichever application you use, whichever performance testing tool you use, okay, we call it as virtual user in performance testing. So remember, with the performance testing tools generate virtual users, okay, and these virtual users will do the different transactions in the application. Which all transactions, guys? Whatever transactions or whatever user flows or whatever application scenarios are going to be in the scope of performance testing, those scenarios will be executed by these virtual users. Here, next, response time. Very, very important, guys. Response time. Let me draw a figure for you. All of you understand client server architecture, right? I'm sorry. This is my client, okay, and this is my server, application server, okay. When I say client, guys, you can give me an example of a client. When I say client, what can be an example for client? Your browser is your client, right? All of you, your browser is your client. Your browser on your desktop or on your mobile device is a client. Whenever you are trying to access any particular application, okay, let's say for example www.example.com, okay, let's say I'm trying to access this application and this is the server for this particular application. Now the client or the user, right, will basically use the browser, or if there is any mobile application, they could use the mobile application as well to interact with this application. So what happens is, when the user through the browser, of course, will start using the application, a request, okay, a request will originate from the client, okay, a request will originate from the client, guys, request 01. The server, right, the server is going to process this request, guys. Server is going to process this request. Agree? Once it processes, so the result could be a successful one or a failed one, right? Means the request could be processed successfully or processed unsuccessfully. That depends on a number of factors. The request has to be valid, right? So there are other factors as well. It will process it, then let's say that is a successful processing. So what the server will do, it will send back the response. Okay, it will send back the response to the client, guys. And this is the response of request one. Now, for example, you launched the application www.example.com on your browser. What happens in the backend? A request will go to that server. The server will process that request and you get back a response. Understood? And then what happens? you are able to see the home page of that application on your browser. But all these things happen very fast, right? Whenever you provide any URL, if your network bandwidth is very good, within a fraction of seconds, you basically are able to see the home page of the application on your browser. Then what will happen? You will, let's say, click on any link on that particular application, or you will navigate to some page on that application. So in that case, again, what will happen? Another request will generate, or another request will go to the server. This will be my request 2. This will be my request 2, right? And then again the server will process this, right? The server will again process the request 2. Clear all of you? The server will process the request 2, and then the response will be sent back to the client, that is to the browser. And then the user will be able to see the page to which he or she navigated. Is it clear all of you? Now, whenever any request goes to the server has to process it. So this process will continue, guys, and so on, right? So I hope you all understand. So this process will go on for any user flow. Whenever the user uses any application, this process will continue. Agree? So when the request reaches the server will take some time to process it or not, everyone. The server will take some time to process it. So let's say we call it as Y. It could be seconds, it could be milliseconds, it could be minutes. Okay. And if it is minutes, then just understand that the performance of the application is very bad, guys. Okay. So it could be time in any unit. Let's say I call it as Y. Okay, I call it as Y. And then when the response is sent back from the server to the client, who can tell me, guys, whenever any information is sent from client to server or from server to client, how is it sent, guys? In form of what? In form of what the data is sent between them? Anyone?
A form of API, sir, actually.
No, no, not API. API could be a medium. When I'm sending something, when the client is sending to the server or server is sending to the client, in form of what the data is sent?
Packet, sir.
Packets. Very good. Data packets, right? Data packets, which we normally call as bytes. Understood all of you? The information is sent in the form of bytes. It is not sent at one go, guys. It is sent in the form of data packets known as bytes. Agree? So you must have seen, let's say you are using an e-commerce application. Whenever the page is loading on your browser, do you see all the elements at one go? Okay, do you see all the elements of the page at one go? Means completely blank page, and just at the strike of a second you get everything on your browser. Is that the case, everyone? Or you see the contents getting loaded on your browser one by one? What is the case? Which one do you experience, guys? The screen is
Second,
completely blank. Sorry.
step by step content added.
Step by step, gradually it gets loaded on your browser, everyone. Are all of you able to understand my question?
Yes, sir, we able actually.
Yes. So gradually the page loads on your browser. Why? Because The data which is sent from the server is sent in the form of packets or bytes. The bytes which reach on your client or the bytes which reach to your browser first, they get loaded first. Then sequentially or after that, whichever bytes come, they get loaded. Understood? So the bytes will start from the server and reach to the client. They will also take some time, or not everyone. Each byte will take some time to reach from the server to the client. Understood, everyone? We have a term known as TTFB, that is time to first byte. Time to first byte means the time taken. So your response is again information, right? It is also made up of bytes. The time taken by the first byte of your response, guys. The first byte of your response. Okay. The time taken by the first byte of your response to reach from the server to the client is known as time to first byte. Very important interview question. What is time to first byte? Understood? The time taken by the first byte of your response to reach from the server to the client is known as time to first byte. It could be in microseconds, it could be in milliseconds, it could be in seconds, guys. Understood, everyone? So let's say time to first byte is, okay, let's say the time taken by the first byte to reach from the server to the client is Z. So do you know what will be my response time, guys? Response time will be the summation of your time taken by the server to process the request plus the time taken by the first byte to reach your client, that is y plus z or z. So whenever next time anyone asks you what do you mean by response time of an application or of a transaction, rather the time taken by the server to process the request, and so it is the time taken by this server to process the request plus the time taken by the first byte to reach from the server to the client. That is my response time, guys, y plus z. And the performance testing tools like JMeter, load runner and all, they provide us this response time. Understood, all of you? So is it clear, all of you, what is response time?
Yes, sir.
If someone asks you
Yes.
what is response
Yes.
time, you all will be able to define.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
The next, throughput. Okay, another very important term, throughput. So we'll be using these terms very often, guys. So you have to get acquainted to these terms. What is throughput? Okay. Now I showed you the figure where the requests will go from the client to the server, and the server will process those requests. Now for one user, one request will go, the first request will go, the response will come back, then again another request will go, the response will come back, again another request will go, the response will come back, right? But just imagine, guys, if that phenomena is happening for so many users, okay, so many users. So many users are using the application, guys. So this thing will happen for so many users in parallel or not. What does that mean? the server has to deal with a lot of requests at one point of time, right? The server has to deal with a lot of requests at any point of time. And because it is the job of the server to process those, it cannot say that, okay, I will first respond to this user, remaining all should, wait for me. Then I will process the request of second user, rest all users should wait for me. Is that the case, guys? Is that the ideal behavior? No. It has to keep on processing the requests. So throughput is nothing but the output of the system or output of the server, guys. So the number of requests, the number of requests processed by the server per unit time. Understood? The number of requests processed by the server per unit time is known as throughput. Here, all of you, the number of requests processed by the server per unit time. So that unit of time could be seconds, that unit of time could be minutes, that unit of time could be hours. Okay, number of requests processed by the server per unit time is known as throughput. Is there a query? Someone is not on mute. Is there a query? If no, I'll request you to be on mute, please. Next, request. What is a request? I told you, right? Whenever any user navigates to any page, any application and all, it does a transaction. Okay. And then the request goes to the server.
So excuse
Now
me.
remember, yes, tell me.
So throughput is measured in seconds, or how is throughput measured?
Throughput is measured in per unit time, means per second, per minute, per hour. Okay, per unit time, not time, per unit time. Understood? Per second, per minute, per hour, in that way.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Okay, then request. So whenever the user does any action on the application in the backend, your request goes to the server, guys. That is our request. Now we'll understand the details of the request later. Okay, so request goes from client to the server. Next, response. So the server will process the request. Okay, the server will process the request and then send the response back to the server. The response could be a successful response. The response could be a unsuccessful response. Request, response. Okay. Transaction, very, very important, guys. Transaction. Whenever the user interacts with the application, right? Whenever the user interacts with the application, a request will go to the server. But guys, every time the request will not go to the server. Understood? Every time the request will not go to the server. Only if there is an interaction required by the client to interact with the server as per the application logic, then only the request will go. Let me give you an example. There is an application and there is a form. Okay, on the application, there are few fields like first name, last name, email ID, and you are entering the email ID, but you are not entering it in a correct format. Okay, you are entering one email ID, but you are not putting it in the correct format. You are getting a error message displayed on the browser. Do you think, ideally, in ideal case, guys, for good application development, do you think that message would have come back from the server? Anyone?
No, it can come from the client side validation as well.
Very good. In most of the cases, there will be client-side validation in place, right? For this particular scenario which I told. But people will think that no, I interacted with the application, I provided a wrong email ID, I got a message, error message, right? So probably server has sent it back. No, guys. In this case, what has happened? There is a client-side validation in place, and that validation logic displayed an error to you. Understood, everyone? I will not call that as transaction. I will not call that as a transaction. Please understand this. Whenever any request or any user action, rather, any user action, what is user action, guys? Whenever the user performs any action on the application, means for example, it is a web application, the user provides a URL and hits enter. The user provides a URL and hits enter, or the user clicks on any link on the application. So that is a user action. And because of that user action, if there is an interaction between the client and the server, that is known as transaction. Understood? That is known as transaction. Is it clear, all of you? Whenever, as a result of the user action, there is an interaction between the client and the server, that will be called as a transaction. Okay? So transactions per second. Transactions per second. This transactions per second is nothing but it is one kind of throughput, guys. Transactions per second means how many transactions are happening per second. Whenever a request is processed, a transaction will happen. Remember, one transaction could consist of one request or multiple requests, guys. We'll see that later, okay? One transaction could consist of one request or multiple requests. Understood? So your transactions per second means number of transactions happening per second. Okay, number of transactions happening per second, and that is known as your throughput also. So I told you transactions per unit time, right? Number of transactions or number of requests processed per unit time. So here it is per second, it can be per minute, per hour, but in general we use transactions per second. Okay. Okay, before I go to the next terminologies, any queries anyone till now? Any queries anyone till now? No queries? Are there any messages in the chat window? But to get all the definitions, I'm already discussing those in these sessions, guys, right? So please pay attention to this. And then if you want, you can also go on the internet and check about them. Okay. But yes, if you want, I can also provide the definitions for them. But see, the point here is we should not by heart, right? We should understand and be able to explain, because in interviews, people or the interviewer looks for whether the candidate has the proper understanding or not, right, guys? Next, iteration and iterations per second. Now, what is iteration? Okay, so I told you that, let me clean it a bit. Okay, I told you that the user is using the application and we have request one going, response one coming, request two going, response two coming back. Now guys, let me give you a scenario. I have to book a flight. I have to book a flight. Or else, let us make it very simple. I want to purchase a product on any e-commerce website, right? I have to purchase a product on any e-commerce website. Who can tell me what are the different steps involved, guys? It doesn't need to be completely accurate, guys. Any, any general steps. What are the different steps which a user will perform in order to purchase a product on any e-commerce website? General steps. Anyone?
Open browser and enter the URL.
Very good.
Sir,
Then
Log in
Browse
into
the
the system,
log in into the application. Very good. Then
uh,
type
add
the
to cart
product in the search
items.
bar,
three.
select add to product and purchase payment.
Okay. So without selecting any product, you added the means you without searching any product. So whatever product you saw, you liked it.
We have to search and then we have to add cart.
Basically, in general, we search for different products, right? It could be belonging to a particular category, but we try to search first. We want to see what all results we are getting. Okay. So I search for a product, right? Then I will get some results from the application. Then, then as one of our, you know, uh, trainee was mentioning that we will then add it to the cart. Maybe we'll select that product and we'll add it to the cart and then we will make the payment, right? And then we will verify whether our order is placed or not. And then I will log out from the application. Everyone, these are the general steps which we perform on any e-commerce application.
Yes,
All of
we
you agree?
track the order.
Okay, very good. So you want to go and check your order, right? You want to track your order. But what did I tell you here? I told you about purchase a product. The one which you told, that is another scenario, right? View order, view or track order. Are you understanding now? Are you
Yes,
getting me? Okay, that is
yes, I
another scenario. The scenario which I was telling is purchase a product. For purchasing product, what all different steps I will do? Okay, so those are the general steps. Launch the application. Someone told me like enter the URL. So instead of saying enter the URL, guys, let's use the term launch the application. Okay, because in performance testing we or in testing terminologies we call it in that way, right? So we'll launch the application. We will log in into the application. We will search for a product. Then whatever product we like, we select that product and then probably add it to the cart and then we check like what is the number of quantities we want to order. Then we proceed, right? We give the address and all and then we do the payment. Once the payment is done, we check if our order is successful or not and then we go and log out, right guys? These are the general steps. So what has happened here, these entire list of steps will be called as one user flow. Understood? This list of steps will be called as user flow. User flow for which scenario, guys? Purchase the product. Agree? Purchase the product. So from launch till logout is one user flow. When I do it for one time, means you complete one user flow, guys. You launch, you log in, then you do those steps, then you log out. That is my one user flow. And when I do one round of that user flow, one complete user flow, I will call it as iteration. I'll call it as iteration, guys. Clear all of you? Is it clear all of you? One complete user flow will be called as one iteration. Any queries, anyone?
Clear, sir.
Next.
No,
When,
clear.
guys, now tell me, this one iteration would hardly take how much time on the maximum side? This one iteration will take how much time on the maximum side? Approximately.
It might 1 or 2 minutes.
Sorry? Sorry, you were
It
not
might be
audible.
1 or 2 minutes.
It might be 1 or 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes or 3 minutes, let's say 5 minutes on the higher side. Okay, 5 minutes on the higher side. But normally in performance testing, we do the tests for 1 hour or 2 hours, guys. In general, I'll come to the different types of tests later. But just remember, we do the tests for 1 hour or 2 hour. So if one user is doing one iteration for in 5 minutes, what it will do for the remaining time? What it does, you know? It will do multiple iterations, guys. Okay, it will do multiple iterations. This loop will continue. First iteration completed, second iteration completed, third iteration completed, fourth iteration completed. These iterations will happen till your duration of your test. Till your duration of your test. Understood? And this is for one user, right? So for every user, this is going to happen, guys. Do you understand now? Are you able to visualize what the performance testing tools do? They will generate the virtual users. Whatever scenario will be in the scope, those application scenarios will be executed by multiple users for multiple iterations. Now, do you understand what is iteration, everyone? So
Yes, sir.
here, when I
Yes.
say iteration, so one complete user flow is known as one iteration. One round of your user flow is known as one iteration, guys. So iterations per second means total number of iterations happening per second. Okay, total number of iterations per happening per second. Now you tell me, guys, in one iteration, whatever we discussed now, purchase a product, do you think there was any transaction happening? Do you think any transaction was happening?
Yes, sir, actually.
Yes.
There was transaction
Transactions.
Yes.
happening. Was there a single transaction, guys? In one iteration, in one iteration, was there a single transaction?
No, sir, there are
No,
multiple transactions.
Multiple transactions.
Multiple transactions. When I do a launch, that is one transaction because interaction is happening with the server. You all remember what is transaction, right? Whenever there is an interaction happening with the server, that is a transaction, right? So in one iteration, I just saw that there are multiple transactions happening. Understood? In one iteration, there are multiple transactions happening. Launch, login, search product, then your select product, right? Add to cart. These all are my transactions because interactions will happen with the server. Is it clear, everyone? Okay.
Yes, sir, clear.
Next,
Yes, sir.
think time. Very, very
It's,
important, guys. Think time. Okay, tell me.
sir.
You tell
Sir,
me.
iteration, we spoke like it's a one complete user flow. So, for this product, I mean, purchase a product scenario, it is like it will take some 5 minutes for some iteration, for an example. So, what will be iterations per second, sir? Like the iteration won't be complete per second, right? So how we call it as iteration per second?
Very good question. So in this case, it was 5 minutes for one user, right?
Yes, sir.
Now we have not only web applications, right? There are different types of applications where the response time will be less. Understood? So, and there would be multiple users, let's say 500 users, 1000 users, 5000 users doing the transactions, right? So it could be possible that in every second, some iterations are getting completed. Okay? 5
Okay, sir.
minutes for one iteration is on a higher side actually. When the tool will do that, because as per our requirement, okay, because see, when we are saying 5 minutes, I'll come to that now. When we are saying 5 minutes, for a real user, it takes 5 minutes, for example, right? Because the real user will not do the transactions constantly. They will chat with someone, they will think, they will do this, they will do that, right? So from a tool point of view, when it is a process in place, so and multiple users doing the transactions, and there could be some applications where the response time is very less. In that case, you can have iterations happening per second also. Okay. APIs are the best example. When each API gets completed within milliseconds, and you have 5 APIs, each API, let's say, take 10 milliseconds or 15 milliseconds, right? So in 1 second, you could have one iteration also. Agree? So it is not related to a purchase product only. Understood? So these are the terminologies which are there in performance testing, and I'm explaining them. Clear? Next is think time. When you as a real user is using the application, okay, you do launch, let's say, the same scenario, let's say, consider you do the launch, you do the login, you do the search product. Now, guys, these transactions, let's say you launch the application. As soon as you launch the application, as a real user, I'm saying, okay, as soon as you launch the application, do you directly log in? As soon as you log in, do you do the search product right away? Then, as soon as you search for the product, do you select the product right away? As soon as you select the product, do you add it to the cart right away, guys? Means so on. Does that happen in that manner?
No.
Do you do
No.
it in a hurry? No,
No.
right? There is a time delay in between those transactions by the user. Agree, all of you? There is a time delay between those transactions by the user. The time delay between the transactions is known as think time. The time delay between the transactions is known as think time, everyone. And remember, in performance testing, we are simulating the real users. We are simulating the production behavior. Our main objective is to design our tests in such a way that we simulate the tests as per our production behavior, as per our real user behavior. So we have to implement think time in our scripts also. Okay, so what is think time? The time delay between the transactions is known as think time. Okay, the next one is pacing. If you want to introduce any time delay between the iterations, one iteration gets completed, then let's say I want to introduce a time delay of 5 seconds. Then the next iteration will happen. Then again I introduce a time delay of 5 seconds. So when you have a time delay between the iterations, that is your pacing. And when you have a time delay between the transactions, that is your think time. So think time and pacing will be very much required when you do the workload design, guys, workload model design. Okay. We'll discuss this in more details, how to do that during our workload modeling session. Network latency. Network latency. The time taken by the request to reach from the client to the server, the time taken by the response to reach from the server to the client will depend on your network bandwidth or not, everyone. If you are using the same application on a 3G connection, if you are using the same application on a 4G connection, if you are using the same application on a 5G connection, will you experience the same performance in all the three cases?
No.
No.
No, right? So definitely there will be a difference in the performance. And why is that performance different? I am using the same application, right? The difference in performance is because of the difference in my network bandwidth, right? So the latency or the delay, right, introduced because of the network is known as my network latency, guys. Network latency. Next, non-functional requirement. We get the requirements to do the tests, right? So for our non-functional testing, whatever requirements we will get, they will be our non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirements. And yesterday I told you there are different types of non-functional testing: performance testing, security testing, accessibility, browser compatibility, operational acceptance. Now, in your project, if all these different types of tests are being done, there is a high probability that you will get the non-functional requirements containing the requirements for all these different types of tests. But if you are responsible for performance testing only, then the performance testing requirements will be in your scope. Okay, the performance testing requirement will be in your scope. One example, guys, I have to achieve a TPS of 50 with 100 users. Okay, the application should achieve a TPS of 50 with 100 users. That could be a performance testing non-functional requirement. The response time for any transaction should not go beyond 3 seconds. That could be a non-functional requirement, and that will be performance testing requirement. Okay. In case of a disaster, my system should be able to recover in 2 hours. That is not a performance testing requirement. That is a disaster recovery requirement. But it is a non-functional requirement. You are not verifying the functionality right here. All these are non-functional use cases. So non-functional requirement specifies the requirements which need to be tested as part of non-functional testing, and non-functional requirements will also include the performance testing requirements. Test script and test scenario. Test script means whatever user flows, whatever application scenarios, okay, whatever application scenarios will be in your scope, that scenarios you have to develop the test scripts, because you are not going to manually do the user flows, right? The performance testing tool will do the user flows. And who will do that? The virtual users generated by the performance testing tool will execute the user flows, right? So for that, we develop the test scripts. And what is test scenario, guys? The way you are going to execute your test means you have developed your script, right? But that has to be executed, right? The pattern which you are going to follow in order to execute your test, that is basically known as a test scenario. One ideal scenario, guys, let's say this is my time on the x-axis. These are my number of users on the y-axis. Okay, number of users on the y-axis. Now, if I am doing a test with 500 users, so let's say this is 500, and here I have 2 hours. Let's say I am going to do a test like this. 500 users load on the system. They run for like say 2 hours and then they log out of the system. This is a execution profile, guys. Right? This is a execution profile. This can be called as my test scenario. My test scenario will basically include my ramp up. We'll go to them, guys, in test execution in details. Ramp up, steady state, and ramp down. Okay, there are other factors. So basically, this is my test execution scenario. Clear, all of you? Next, load generator. So what is a load generator? As for the term, right? As the term implies, guys, it will generate the load. Okay, it will generate the load. So basically, the system on which you are going to do the tests, right? The systems using which you will do the tests, or the systems on which you are going to generate the load is known as your load generator. Okay, so remember the virtual users will be generated on which system, guys? On the load generator. Okay, the virtual users will be generated by the load generator machine and the requests will be triggered from the load generator. So guys, one question here. If you cannot access your application under test from your load generator, can you do your performance test execution?
No, sir.
No.
You cannot do that. Clear, all of you? If you cannot access your application under test from your load generator machine, you cannot do your performance test. If your performance testing tool is not available on your load generator, can you do your performance test? If your performance testing tool is not available or cannot talk to your load generator, will you be able to do your performance test execution?
Hope, sir.
No.
No, right? You cannot do that. Here, all of you. So these are the different terms which are commonly used in performance testing. Any queries, anyone? Any queries, anyone?
So
Okay.
think time.
So
So think time is used to simulate real user behavior, right? So for I mean, what is the importance of pacing?
as I told you, for during your performance test execution, like 2 hours, right? During your 2 hours, multiple iterations will happen, right? So if you want to introduce any time delay between your iterations, then that is known as pacing. What is its significance? You will get to know more in workload model design. You will understand that more. Okay, why are we introducing it?
Okay, sir.
Any other queries? Okay, so with this, we'll stop this session for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed today's session, the first session of our exclusive training, JMeter Beginner to Master with Groovy, Dynatrace, Kubernetes, Docker, InfluxDB, Grafana, Jenkins, and BlazeMeter. Thank you all for attending, guys.